Hi, I'm Lloyd Swain with Charter Channel 3, and thank you for watching today. There's a new reality in the funding of our schools, and I'm here today with the superintendent of the Richland School District, Jim Busey, and the president of the school board, Rick Jansons. Thank you for being here, gentlemen.
Thanks, Lloyd.
There is a new reality in funding, and it started in the last session as well. Give us a little history on what the state has done in funding the schools over the past few years.
Well, specifically in Richland School District, we've lost about $9.2 million in state-level funding in two major funds. Initiative 728, which was passed by the voters in the year 2000, about 72% voted yes to keep class sizes smaller. Our kindergarten through fourth grade, we have a kindergarten through fourth grade ratio, as we call it, to keep class sizes smaller. That funding is all gone now, and so we've continued to reduce staffing while trying to keep all of our programs and keep the school district going in a positive direction. It's just becoming more and more difficult with that reduced funding.
Now that's your operation side of the funding for your school district as well. What do you do when you have that kind of spending cut? Where do you go first?
Well, the first thing we've looked at is how do we become more efficient with our staffing models,
Sure.
whether it be certified staff, support staff, or administrative staff. So we've actually reduced in the last 2 years about 5 administrators, about 15 certified staff, and some support staff as well. So we've tried to become more efficient with our dollars, but we're at the point that the efficiencies are in place, and to continue to fund class sizes and trying to keep those class sizes in a manageable range has been very difficult.
Rick, as a school board president, you've got to look at this as some difficulty as well. What do you hear from the residents and from other board members about these budget cuts?
We think our primary focus has to be on the students and student learning. So the board has heard from the community, and the board believes that our priority is to keep funds flowing to teachers, to the classrooms, to keep those kids in a great learning environment. So we've asked the administration to look at a lot of the support services. Where can we save money that won't directly affect kids? We have refinanced some of our bonds. We have looked at energy savings and implemented energy savings. We've done some self-insurance kinds of things that save us money. So, but we've done this now for 2 or 3 years with less money, and we're to the point now where this upcoming special session of the legislature, we're really worried about direct effects now in the classroom, where class sizes get quite a bit bigger halfway through the school year if the legislature implements it right away, and we're concerned.
I just think as well, what do you expect from this legislature? Do you have any idea or what they're going to cut? It seems like it's going to be
the governor has given some proposals. I think they're trying to make up $1.6 to $2 billion. So one of the things that they're talking about that directly affects all of the schools in our region is reduction or elimination of levy equalization. What levy equalization does, in Washington State, our Constitution requires a uniform or equal public education system
Sure.
across the state.
Sure.
And the state is obligated to fund basic education, but anything extra, and by the state's definition of extra, those are things like art, music, some of the history classes, a lot of transportation, all of our extracurricular activities.
Athletics.
Sure, athletics, the music program, the drama program, all of that is funded locally. And the state, because we are in our region, not just Richland, but Kennewick, Pasco, have less property value than some other districts of the state makes adjustments called levy equalization. So for Richland for this year, because we pass a levy, the state will match part of it, and we get an additional $4.2 million for this school year. What the legislature could do, and the governor has suggested that to the legislature to do, is to eliminate that this year. The problem is we're already spending that money. We set our budget in August based on good faith of the legislature from last year and what they said they would give us. So now we're in the position of how do you cut $4.2 million, which is real close to, well, it's between 4 and 5% of our budget.
Wow.
While we're operating. And that would continue through the next 2 years as well. So we are concerned, and that's why we're talking.
Do you think the measures that you've taken to spend what you've gotten, it has been effective? I mean, do you feel that the students are getting the education services and the education that they need?
Well, I do, Lloyd. I mean, having been in the classrooms, I
Sure.
go into buildings and classrooms each week, and see the great teaching going on, great community support we have. One of the things Rick just mentioned about the levy equalization, that is part of basic education, and it is a paramount duty of the state of Washington to provide that quality education, basic education, to all of our students in the state.
And that's a constitutional thing.
It's a constitutional issue,
Sure.
and it's very clear about that paramount duty. And so we continue to look at how do we become more efficient with those dollars to the best we possibly can. But as I already mentioned, the fact is when we reduce staffing levels, we get to the point that it is very, very difficult to sustain that quality education. Class sizes, we have classes that are in the 38 to 39 range at our high schools, and we have classes in the low 30s in some of our intermediate classes. And so that's very, very difficult for our staff to continue to provide the quality education that we've become accustomed to.
Wow. The levy, maintenance and operation. You do that every 2 years, is that right? In other
Yes,
words,
correct.
it's like a replacement levy, but this year could be different.
Well, and you mentioned replace. That's exactly what it is. It was passed by the voters last 2010 in February. We're going to be asking our voters again on February 14th, 2012 to support, again, the local funding for our schools. One of the things the board has to do eventually, and we're looking at December 13th, is making the final decision on what that exact amount's going to be. But right now we're about 17% of our budget is local funding. Rick already mentioned 4.2 million levy equalization, so we add those together, we're in the 21 to 22% range of our entire budget is dependent upon that local funding support. And one of the key issues as a session begins, a special session begins on November 28th, is that we must take a careful look at what is going to be cut in addition to what has already been reduced in the last 2 years. A very critical time for us.
End of this month, if everyone's headed to Olympia, what can I as a voter do to sway the legislators and say, hey, education is in the Constitution, it's the #1 thing, what
That's
can
what
we do?
I want you to do. I want voters to call, write their legislators, tell them that they understand that we need to make cuts in our government, we need to balance our budget, but they're sworn to uphold not only the U.S. Constitution but the Washington State Constitution. Again and again, Washington State judges have said that our Constitution requires education to be fully funded and funded first. To me, that means that you take the cuts, you make your priorities, and you take your cuts in other parts of the budget. We're talking about $1.4 billion out of a $32 to $34 billion budget. There are other places, I believe, that they can balance the budget other than on the backs of elementary school kids.
And one of the key things is that, this education funding in the state of Washington is an investment in all of our kids' futures. And so when we look at that investment, the dividends are going to be paid down the road. It's very difficult to measure it tomorrow.
Sure,
So we talk about that a lot. Again, education is an investment in everyone's future, and all of us can speak about that personally and professionally. So we need our parents and our community to talk to legislators about that. I know they believe that. In fact, we just had a tour with a number of our legislators in our schools. They've been very proactive, very good to work with. They have some tough decisions. But again, as Rick said, the paramount duty, #1 duty, is education.
Has this happened before? Have they ever had budget issues like we are experiencing today with this state? This seems nationwide a lot of ways, but this seems to be a real challenge this time.
It is a real challenge, and I would say, in my experience as a school superintendent, unprecedented. We used to go to have special sessions, and that was additional money that we had to support our schools and our programs and to expand great things for kids. In the last few years, it's been to reduce, and we've mentioned a number of those reductions. It's becoming very, very difficult to continue all those programs that are wonderful programs for kids and their families.
Well, what is the tax rate for the replacement levy or the
We're approximately $3.10 in the Richland School District, and Rick mentioned levy equalization. There are schools across this state that have much higher rates and some that have much lower. And obviously, we have to make the best decision about our kids in Richland and all the students and all the families there. And so we're going to be looking very carefully at this legislative session to make that final decision on what that number is going to be. And again, I want to emphasize this is a replacement tax. It's not a new tax. And we're going to be looking at, again, how do we backfill some of these state reductions that we've had over the past few years.
Wow, there was an article I read from the Tacoma News Tribune and that about this levy equalization, and it was if you lived in the Seattle area, you would pay $1.28 per thousand of assessment. Here it's $3.10, but it's based on the population. Very important for this area to get the equalization.
Yes.
And the equal education that's available around the state. It really will be an interesting challenge to.
Well, there's 295 school districts in the state of Washington, and about 70 districts do not get levy equalization. And one of my former districts did not get any levy equalization, and a few cents on $1,000 of assessed valuation could raise all kinds of money to support kids. So that's the fairness equity issue in our state, is to not cut levy equalization. The other issue that continues to come up is the time that we have in the school day or the school year. A lot of discussion going on, some recent articles about reducing that 180-day school year. And quite frankly, I am very, very concerned about that. One of the things we did in the district was to commit to making sure we had 180 days of school this year, that instructional time, protecting that time. I can tell you that reducing any instructional time, again, is not a very good investment in the future of our kids. We actually need more time. We're constantly looking for ways, more partnerships with our community and some of our organizations to provide before school and after school learning for our kids. So to reduce that school year is going to be very, very difficult and very problematic, in my opinion, in the future of the kids' lives.
That's one of the things local citizens can do and local organizations can do to directly impact the schools. We have local service organizations and local churches who volunteer at some of our elementary schools and provide tutoring, reading, coaching before and after school. That additional contact with those kids makes a world of difference, especially in some of the areas that have higher need. And that's a direct way. We talk about taxes, we talk about legislature, all of that is kind of Olympia-ish. You can make a difference right where you are, right in our local schools, whether you're in Richland, Kennewick, Pasco, or wherever, and impact kids.
Well, that's kind of interesting, a kind of a public-private partnership with the community. I think that's what a great...
Well, we have actually, as Rick mentioned, we have 2 elementary schools now that have that partnership with our local churches, a third one planning that at this point in time. We have a lot of parent support groups, organizations, PTA, PTOs, booster clubs, supporting our kids in after school and before school learning. So we really, really appreciate that. We need to do more partnering with them, and we're going to continue to pursue those opportunities.
Well, it sounds like everyone's got their work cut out for them ahead, and hopefully this session will go okay for the education portion of...
We'll see. One of the things I would tell the voters about public education, you hear quite a bit about things are bad, things are failing, and I have to tell you, when you tour our schools, when you look into the classrooms and you watch our teachers and our students, I'm proud of what they're doing. They're directly affecting our kids and directly affecting our future. President Reagan in the early 80s commissioned a report, and it came out entitled A Nation at Risk. And there were some recommendations there. One of them was to extend the learning time, extend from 180 to 210 or even 220 days a year. It talked about a breadth of curriculum, having robust standards, and not just math, not just reading, but history and the arts and everything else that goes into educating a good citizen and a good future for our nation. One of the things I think where the education and the political establishment can improve is to quit concentrating just on those basics and continue to rely on professional teachers, and we have great teachers, and rely on parents and finding what's best for those kids, even if it's not math or reading as their primary love. Maybe it's drama, maybe it's the arts, maybe it's civics. We get better politicians in the future, I don't know. But I think the wide education is important, and that's what we're asking for our nation and our public and our constituents here to keep providing. it'll make a difference in the future of our children and the future of our nation, and it's vital, I think.
Well, I would further comment on the well-rounded education part. We can all remember back in our experiences what made a difference in our lives, and surely it was a lot of those activities. It could be athletics, it could be drama, sports programs, the music programs that made a difference in our lives, and we need to continue to advocate for that well-rounded education, and that takes a lot of support in our communities, and a lot of support in at the state level and the national level as well.
That's great.
Good things are happening in the schools.
That's
really
right.
good things.
Hey,
Come and see them.
Jim, Busey, Rick Jansons, thank you for being here and talking about this. I know this is going to be a difficult time up ahead, but let's see where we go with this. I know you're both very passionate for what you do, and it's great to see. And you folks, if you're out there and you're concerned about education, I think like all of us, how important it is in our society today, please write your legislator, your congressman, and express your thoughts about this. So again, thank you both for being here. I'm Lloyd Swain with Charter Channel 3. Thank you for watching.